Hey friend, Callan here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you how to mix amazing grand piano in just 3 steps. So let me start here by playing you the piano inside the finished mix here, and then I'll solo it up. You can hear what it's sounding like by itself in its finished mixed state. So here it is inside the final mix. So you can hear our piano, you can hear it trailing off there, you can hear it's big, it's still bright, and it has a ton of depth. So it has some presence in the track, but it's not overtaking everything else that's going on. It's competitive, but it's not overpowering. So let me take off all the processing here, and we'll go through each plugin one by one, and I'll show you how we're getting this sound. So the first piece of the puzzle here, the first piece of the puzzle here, step number 1 is getting rid of any frequencies we don't need. And for me, that always means starting with a high pass filter. On something like this, inside of a bigger track that has a lot of guitars, that has other keys, background vocals, drums, bass, that has all this other stuff going on, we need to make sure there's room for each thing to slot in its fundamental frequency. That means making room in the bottom end for the bass guitar and the kick drum and anything else, the bottom end of the acoustics or the electrics, anything else like that. So I'm rolling the high pass all the way up to about 182 hertz here, 12 dB per octave slope. We're going to get rid of all the bottom end here on the piano that we don't need taking up space in our mix. So let me play it to you without it, and then I'll kick this high pass in. By itself, it sounds like we're thinning the piano out too much, but when we sit it inside of the track, it opens up more room, more headroom for everything else in our track. If we have everything competing for this space here at like 100, at like 80 hertz there, where our kick drum, where our bass drum, where the bottom end of our guitars is sitting, we're just going to have a whole bunch of muddy buildup there in the bottom end. That's not what we want. We want to hear what we need in the bottom end, bass guitar and our kick drum, and then we can move everything else up a little bit. So our guitars and keys can sit here around the 200 hertz mark fundamental frequency wise. So our bottom end is going to be more focused here around 150, 200 on our piano rather than down around 80 hertz. The other thing we want to get rid of is any kind of honkiness in the mid-range. When you're recording piano, if you're up in that mid area, middle C, anything above that, you're going to get some honkiness in the bright tone. As you start building chords in there, if you don't have anything super, super low, if you're not playing below middle C, you're going to get this honky sort of tone that you want to pull out. It actually makes the piano sound fake and a lot more digital than it should. So we're just pulling a half dB out here at around 700 hertz, 693 hertz, just a half dB here. It's going to give our piano a little bit more realness, and it's going to open up the mid-range for everything else to sit in there. So it's going to give our vocal a little bit of a slot, our acoustics, our electrics, albeit it's only a half dB, but it's going to make a difference here inside of our track. So take a listen here without this, and then I'm going to put this half dB cut in. You can hear it's not an overwhelming difference here, but it's just that subtle change that softens some of those notes on the walk up on the piano. So it doesn't get so honky or so nasally sounding in the mid range. So that's our first step there, is we want to get rid of any frequencies we don't need. So high passing the bottom end so there's no buildup down there in the lows, and then pulling out any frequencies that are building up in the mid-range that are giving us any kind of honky sort of sound. Now, step number 2 is we want to get our piano even, and we want to inject some energy into the playing here. My favorite tool for that is an 1176 style compressor. I'm using the FET comp here from Studio One. This is inside of their FET channel plugin. And just 3, maybe 5 dB reduction if you need it on some of the peaks is going to help even out the piano performance overall volume-wise, and it's going to give it a little bit of extra energy because it has the vintage vibe of this 1176. So take a listen without it, and then I'll click it in. So it does a couple things that kind of feel counterintuitive. If you notice without the compressor, the performance actually feels more even overall. It feels like it's sitting in one spot. There's no dynamics to it. Once we kick the compressor in, it actually evens out our volume, even though it doesn't feel like it, because it's emphasizing the initial transient of some of these bigger peaks here. What that does is it helps you hear these walk-ups on the piano inside the full mix here. Take a listen one more time without the compressor and then with it. I just have the attack set at about 0.55 milliseconds, fastest release 4:1 ratio, and it's going to help us grab those bigger peaks but emphasize the transients so they pop out inside our mix. Here's without it and then with. Evens out our piano and gives it a ton of energy, so it's going to feel present inside of our track here. So that's step number 2. And step number 3 is we want to go back and we want to add what we want to emphasize about the piano here. So the first thing I want to emphasize is the brightness in the top end. This is going to help the piano cut through all of these guitars and background vocals, and it's going to help you hear it on the side. So it's going to give it that little bit of ear candy feel in this final section of the song where we have everything going on. We're really going for it here. Lead guitar, background vocals, lead vocal. We want to make sure we can still hear these fills on the piano. So I'm up at like 4K here, and we're adding about 6 dB, so 5.76 dB here. This is going to give us some brightness, and it's going to emphasize the attack even further on our piano here. So take a listen without this boost, and then I'll kick it in. So we are drastically brightening this piano here, taking it from being this kind of dull and flat sort of sound and opening up the top end here. You can see it's a wider boost up at 4K, so we get some of this 2, 3K area, and we also reach up towards this 5, 6, 7, 8K area. So we get some of that top end air as well, while emphasizing that mid-range brightness, that high mid brightness that's going to help the piano cut through all of the other elements in this track. Now, the other thing I want to emphasize here in our last step is I want to add some depth, and I want to emphasize the bigness of the piano. I want to emphasize the room sound. So I'm sending the piano out to the hall verb here. That's this guy here, and it's literally just the factory hall here from inside of Studio One. You can see there's two of them. It's a little bit of a stereo widening trick that I've got going on here. So I'm just using the splitter, and I've got one on the left and one on the right channel. So as the stereo piano goes into this reverb, it's being swapped on the output. So the signal that's coming into the right side of the reverb is being output on the left side of the reverb here. So just swapping the stereo panning on our reverb channel, and then just an EQ on the back end, rolling off anything below 300 hertz. So we're going to add some depth with our reverb here, but we're going to make sure it's not too muddy. We rolled off our bottom end in our first step. We don't want to bring back any of that muddiness by pulling up the reverb here. So take a listen. We'll start without it, and then I'll click our reverb in. Pay attention to how it affects the depth of our piano. You can hear as it trails off there, it's really making it feel like you're watching someone play this piano in a big hall setting. It's giving you that depth on the piano. Now, you don't have to go as far as I am with the hall verb here. You don't have to put as much of it on the piano or mix it in with the piano. This is more of a choice for this track, and I'll play it to you here in the beginning. You can hear the vibe we're sort of going for with the piano on this track. So we're going for that more dreamy sound with our acoustics, our guitars, and the piano here. So like I said, you don't have to go as far as I am or use as much of the hall verb as I am, but just putting it in there on our grand piano is giving it that feeling of you're watching someone play this grand piano in a big hall. It's giving you that sense of depth here. So let me play you one more time inside the track here. I'll solo it up and I'll ABR processing as well. So let's review here our 3 steps for getting an amazing grand piano mix. Step number 1 is we want to get rid of anything we don't need. So rolling off excess bottom end so it's not competing with our bass guitar and our kick drum. Pulling out any kind of honkiness in the mid-range here, helping the piano feel more real and feel a little bit softer inside the track. Step number 2 is we're evening out the sound and adding some energy with this 1176 style compressor, so emphasizing that front end transient while still evening out the volume of our piano. And step number 3 is we're adding to our piano, so adding some brightness, emphasizing that high mid frequencies, opening up the top end, and then bringing in our reverb to add some depth to our piano overall. I hope that was helpful for you. If you are looking to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF guide that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the guesswork. Completely free to download, and you can get access to that by clicking the link below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.